I'm Honey Novick, and I'm 77 years young. Something that I've done recently, I didn't really think about that one because I try to do something every day that gives me a sense of, wow, today was a good day. So let me just think about, okay, so I guess the most recent thing that is out of the ordinary is I'm friends with Bill Bissett, who is a Canadian National Treasure painter and poet. He's 86 years old and he is really disabled. He, in my humble opinion, needed a new pair of shoes. And I got the bright idea that he needed Skechers slip-ins. I went to pick him up. I went to pick up some friends who could help me with his walking and his mobility. And we went off and we got Bill a pair of Skechers slip-ins. So for me, that was something that I'm really proud of. We're on our way to go on tour to Nova Scotia shortly. And so I just thought it was very important for him to have good shoes. And me too. I mean, you may have heard of the song, the Paul Simon song, Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes. Well, I bought rhinestones on the heels of my shoes, and they're slip-ins too, and they're just wonderful, like cushions. I love that I'm a witness to history. I was there when I was in high school when John F. Kennedy was shot. I was in high school when Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was shot. I was out of high school when Martin Luther King was shot. But I bore witness to Elvis when I was a really little girl, this phenomenon called Elvis. And then as a teenager, I bore witness to the influence of the Beatles on North America. And if I'm limiting myself to the cultural aspects, I believe that it is through the culture that we see the rest of the world. That, especially for me as a North American kid, and for being alive at the time in the 50s and 60s in Toronto schools where I was a student, I knew all 50 states and their capitals before I knew what the 10 provinces and those capitals were. So the influence of American historical stuff was really quite profound. So that's why I'm saying to pay attention to culture is significant, because it is really the cream rising to the top of society, and the rest of it just is facts and figures and experiences like the news. But the culture is what we feel. And for me, that makes the difference. Like with JFK being shot, it wasn't just that a man was shot. It's that dreams were killed with him. A lot of people had a lot of dreams, and they seemed to become discouraged. I would have to say, just get ready. It's coming, and just don't have any expectations because you don't know what's coming around the pike. But just know it's not as bad as you are taught that it could be. It's actually quite lovely. I'm slowing down, and it's a whole new way of looking at the world. So it's a privilege, really, to become an older person in this day and age. As a young woman, I struggled, and I have survived kidney disease. And so that being sick is a fear that really never leaves. But I'm healthier now at 77 than I was at 17. And I'm much more positive and optimistic. And who would have thought that as an older woman, particularly, that there could be such a thing as being optimistic without being, really naively rosy. That's not my way. I look at things and I know things are difficult, but they're not impossible. Only one song? Well, there's Neil Young's Harvest Moon, and then there's Chopin's, it's the Nocturne in C sharp minor. Another, let me think. There's a country song called Darlin' that I really like. And of course, almost anything by Joan Baez. I really like a lot of Linda Ronstadt, like Blue Bayou. It's not really her song. I think it's somebody else's song. But I can't choose one song. It just, and then I have my own songs that I feel, like if one can be described as a song catcher, then there's the songs that I've caught. It reminds me that everything has a rhythm. Music has a rhythm. It reminds me that when you get rid of the limitations, like the 12-tone European scale, and get into understanding that different scales have more notes, that things are open, that things are not one way only, that they can be almost like riding a magic carpet. You just get on and you go, and you see what you see, and then if you can pick something up and take it with you, that's great. I don't think there's a difference. I think they're both the same thing. And I don't really think all the time about my age. I mean, I've definitely slowed down. I definitely have to deal with a body that wasn't nearly as resilient as it once was. Sleeping patterns change. For me, at least that's one thing that age has taught me, is that I just don't sleep as well as I used to. And so what I try to do is just honor what pleases me. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so I think that's very helpful. So that cuts out a lot of choices, just vegetables and legumes and things like that. So that's great. But aside from that, I can't really say for sure. Well, I know you want me to talk about Leonard. So I first heard of this amazing man, Leonard Cohen, when I was about 19 years old. My friend Mimi bought his album, and it was an LP, and I was impressed. For one thing, he's Jewish, like me, and I could never please my parents, well, my mother particularly, or my other relatives, in finding some guy that they approved of. But with Leonard, I seemed to see that this image was something that maybe they can shut up about. Look at this. So I began to be a fan, and I learned Suzanne, I learned Marianne, I learned Leonard's music, I read his poetry, and then he started to get dark. As time went on, my fangirl just thought, Len, I don't know what happened to you, but I'm not going there. And then I was actually in the Maritimes, this was maybe decades later, and somebody gives me a new Leonard album. And there was a line in it that said, I'm your man. And I just thought, whoa, Lenny's back. Well, I listened to that over and over again for hours. And then I learned that Jewish Leonard Cohen, became a Buddhist. And I'm interested in Buddhism, but Leonard's Buddhism is different. He's Zen. He gets up at 5 a.m. and is silent. That did not appeal to me at all. But I discovered the Buddhism of Nichiren, of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with only one rule. Once you start, never stop. I thought, I can deal with that. From all the hours of listening to Leonard's music, coming back from the Maritimes at that point, I memorized one of his lines, like a blessing come from heaven, for something like a second, I was healed and my heart was at ease. And at the time, I was researching obscure Yiddish music that I could record and produce and really provide so that that aspect of culture would be preserved. And I included that quote on the CD cover. And then I read that Irving Layton, who was Leonard's mentor as well as me, Irving encouraged me as a songwriter more so than as a poet. And when Irving was being honored by the country, I applied to write the tribute song for Irving, and I got the opportunity, and off I went to Montreal. But I was also warned not to look at Leonard, and I had never occurred to me that Leonard was going to be there. But once that seed was planted, I thought, oh my God, Leonard, I can possibly see Leonard, who I call God, but never to his face. And then it's the day of the celebration, and sure enough, there's Irving and there's Leonard. And I did my song. Irving gave me a standing ovation. I thought, phew, I mean, I've been accepted. And there was a party afterwards, and I went, and all of Leonard's friends from when he was a teenager going to camp, who called him Lenny, were there, and they were asking him for pictures. And I thought, well, I want a picture too. So I got one with him smoking a cigarette and his arm around me. And I say, someday you just never know when you meet God. But I also confided to him that I used one of his lines without permission. And when he asked me which one it was, I told him, and he was very gracious. If anything anybody says about Leonard personally, it's always that he's gracious. And he very graciously gave me his blessing. But as two Jews who were practicing Buddhists, I brought that up. And the common thing between us, which I believe has a relevance to what we're doing here, is the topic of suffering. And is it everybody suffers? Is suffering a choice? That kind of thing. And in his writings, he addresses sufferings from a humanistic point of view. And that's why I started chanting as well, to deal with my own suffering and to have a greater understanding of what suffering means as a human being. So that was a wonderful meeting point, and I made Leonard laugh. I said to him, I'd like to sing with you. And he just laughed. So I thought, oh, I can tell everybody I made Leonard laugh, because the value of laughter is invaluable. So that's my Leonard story in a nutshell. Oh, there's always room to grow. I think whenever we start limiting ourselves, we do ourselves a disservice, because then we never know what we can accomplish. I had an argument with a colleague just the other day. It was political. His politics and mine certainly are not equal. And I thought the only way I can get out of this is by saying, I'm sorry I upset you. That was never my intention. And he said, apologies, if you think that you need to apologize, then you don't understand. And I thought, there's no way I'm talking to this man. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I love you, whether I mean it or not, but I mean it. And just expect nothing in return. And it was difficult for me to say to this person, I love you, because it means giving something of myself that I wasn't prepared for, with no expectations of anything being returned, including a decent word, a word of respect or understanding or anything. And so I had to do it. So that's my long answer to your question, is yes, we always have to challenge ourselves. That they come from where their own life's experience is, and they foist that on other people, whereas it's not the same for others. And I wish people would start to learn to be a little bit more discerning, that when we meet people, that we just try to greet them for how we are and how they are, and to come together on a humanistic level so that there is, with all of our differences, that there is one thing that we can meet, that we can bridge together, and that is our mutual humanism.